everybody, and welcome to Mita's Deep Dive series for social equity. Today, we are going to be talking about building a brand in the cannabis space. Today, I have with me Ali Marconi with Copper State Farms, Catherine Blackwell with Open Door Dispensaries, Steph Swirgle of Giving Tree Dispensary, and Kim Prince of Proven Media. Ali, did you want to start and give us a little bit of background about yourself and Copper State?
Absolutely. So, hi, my name is Ali Marconi. I'm the Director of Marketing at Copper State Farms. I've been with the company for about 3 years, so I've really had an opportunity to see everything that has grown, literally pun intended, in the past 3 years. And that might not sound like a lot of time, but in cannabis years, that definitely feels more like a decade. But for those who don't know, we're a vertically integrated cannabis company. We have one of the largest greenhouses in North America. That allows us to do some really fun stuff in Arizona. So we have 4 retail dispensary locations called Soulflower. At our Soulflower locations and also other, dispensaries in the valley and across Arizona, we have a handful of house brands that our farm also powers. So Good Things Coming, DNA Genetics, and Copper State Farm cartridges.
Perfect, thank you. Catherine, do you want to go next?
Yes, my name is Catherine Blackwell. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Open Door Dispensaries. We are a turnkey franchise model for cannabis dispensaries. I spent 30 years in a quick experience in the franchising space and just trying to bring that experience and all those tools and tactics to dispensary operators. So, yeah.
Yeah. And Steph, do you want to go next?
I'd love to. So I had to laugh when Ashley was saying, when Ali was saying from Copper State that in cannabis years, 3 years is a long time. I thought to myself, okay, so that means that my 4 weeks here at Giving Tree Dispensary calculates to roughly how many years in cannabis years? So yes, I'm Steph Swirgle. I am the Director of Marketing for Giving Tree Dispensary, and I'm very new to the cannabis industry. For the last 2 years, I've been working with our CEO and founder, Lilac Power, to develop Revelry, which is a capsule brand for menopause. And in that experience, I just fell in love with the industry. I've been really inspired by the work the industry does, both from a health and wellness perspective and a decriminalization perspective. And so I had this opportunity to jump on board with Giving Tree and joined after 16 years with a Fortune 100 corporation, and it's been an incredible experience. Very much like our partners at Copper State Farms, we are vertically integrated. We have a retail operation in Northern Phoenix. We have gorgeous flower that we grow, and we have 3 amazing in-house brands: Kindred, Revelry, which I just mentioned, and then a specialty brand called Catatonic. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to learn more about the industry from Catherine and Ali.
Perfect, thank you. And Kim, do you want to give a little bit of background on Proven Media?
Thank you, Ashley. I'm Kim Prince. I'm the founder of Proven Media. We are a highly specialized firm. We help companies within the cannabis industry, whether they touch the flower, they're non-plant touching. We help them with marketing, communications, and PR strategies, and then the execution of those. We were named one of the top 5 most powerful cannabis PR firms in the country. So while we're based in Arizona, we work with brands all over the country. And I'm thrilled to say that we've done work with all of the wonderful panelists today, and Ashley's also on our team. So we're very honored to work in the cannabis industry, and we try to really raise the bar and come with double the professionalism that someone might expect, and help brands really achieve their goals. So that's what we do.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so today we are talking about building a brand, and I want to just jump right into it. This is a very open-ended and broad question, but from your standpoint and what you've worked on so far in the cannabis industry, why is it so important to have a built-out brand for your company?
I'll go first on that one. So one of the things that I've observed is that even though when you say you work in the cannabis industry, people's ears kind of perk up and it sounds very illicit, and you get all sorts of different questions. At the end of the day, from a marketing and branding perspective, it is like every other industry. Um, like any other company on the planet, brand identity is really vital to a company's success. It tells the customers who you are, what you do, why it matters, and why they should care. So thinking about, how it might be different in this industry versus others, ultimately it's the same thing. You're selling a product or service, and it's your job as the brand creator to be able to sell that brand to the people that need it.
And just following up on what Steph was saying is, it's the marketplace is getting more crowded. It may not be as crowded in Arizona right now, but it will be. And to differentiate yourself. So your branding really tells who you are, what you stand for, the customers you're trying to serve, to be able to differentiate yourself from every other dispensary out there, every other brand out there. Very important.
I think that is a good point because the space has become so populated with different brands that, one edible company from the next, you really have to differentiate. And especially with target audiences that you're going after, a lot of times people will say, well, we want everybody because it's recreational, but really it comes down to who are you actually targeting, because we don't have billions of dollars to spend on advertising. So having that messaging in line is definitely something that we want to make sure is happening with the cannabis brands that we're launching. Speaking of target audiences, let's chat a little bit about how you go about determining who that is, and what they are looking for.
I would say our secret weapon, and it's really not a secret, but the accessibility to it might be the challenge, but really relying on our data at our dispensaries and understanding our consumer behavior. If we're seeing a particular type of customer, a certain age, a certain zip code, that might drive us to take a brand in a certain direction, bullseye demographic wise. Like, to your point earlier, cannabis really does have a role for anyone from legal cannabis age to 100. But when you look at how different segments are operating and, different components, it kind of can say, okay, well, I want to make this brand really fun, really Gen Z, because majority of my consumers who are already buying these products, just not as maybe this brand yet, are in this age group, and they'll relate to this, they'll get it. So we have a lot of fun with data as it pertains to our customers. And I think for me, understanding our consumer is I go to bed thinking about it and I wake up thinking about it. Like, how can I just get more in front of them and, give them what they're looking for and what they need?
Yeah. I mean, I think making data-driven decisions is so important. And I think that's probably going to be something, for the folks at home watching this, that becomes a running theme, is making data-driven decisions, using the metrics at your disposal to really drive really efficient decision making. That being said, if you're just starting out, it can be a little tricky to access data. And one thing I've noticed coming from the financial services industry, where it is all about the numbers, that level of granularity isn't always available to everyone. And so thinking about what you can do within the scope of perhaps just starting a brand or just building a dispensary is really think about, first of all, trust yourself and trust your gut. Now, you can be wrong. You will make decisions, and then you'll look back at the data once you have access to it and go, well, I don't know, that could have been different. But, at the end of the day, if you're creating a brand, it's probably because you've identified a problem that you believe your product or service can solve. So it's inherent to that discovery process that you're going to be figuring out who's going to benefit from your idea, and then how to position your brand to appeal to that target audience. So, I think it's important to acknowledge that it is about access. access to data, access to budget. All of those things are really important to building a brand. And even if you don't have the full gamut of that information in front of you when you start, there are some steps that you can definitely take to try to make data-driven decisions based on what you have access to. And in the absence of that, just really taking it down to the very basics, which is what kind of market am I serving? How do I need to talk to them? Where do I meet them where they're at? So, for example, with Revelry, our cannabis brand for menopause, our clientele is not on TikTok. I mean, I'll watch reels on Instagram all day that come over from TikTok, but I'm not going to be on TikTok. Thinking about Catatonic, our THCA crystal brand, like they're not going to be on Pinterest. So it's just kind of understanding with those heuristics, you know, how you can target your audience in the absence of that data.
Yeah, and I was going to actually lead with the fact that it starts and ends with your customer. So whether if you're building a brand new dispensary as one of these hopefully new social equity license winners, and you're building a new dispensary brand, really starting with who you want to service. I mean, who are you really trying to reach? Is it a medicinal, more of a clinical type situation that you want to create, or environment that you want to create? Are you really going towards the college student? That's a completely different message, completely different look, completely different medium, marketing channel, like Steph was just describing, you know, going to where your customer is, but knowing who you want to target. I think that is probably one of the first questions that you want to ask yourself, is who are you really trying to reach? And there are, even if you don't have the data right off the bat for a dispensary or a product brand, there are resources out there that you can profile another brand and get that data from that brand, and that kind of can help you at least have a stepping stone before you can start gathering your own, or have enough data of your own to be able to make some of those decisions based on your own company or your own brand. Equio is one of them. New Frontier Data, phenomenal amount of data from them, just incredible. So good resource to take note of.
Yeah, and to that point, you know, if you have an idea for how you want to position your new dispensary or how you want to position a new brand, take a look in the market and see what's already out there, and see how other successful dispensaries and brands are positioning themselves. Think about if you're going after that same target audience and what that means for the future of your company. You know, oftentimes you'll have a great idea and you won't be the first to market with it, and you'll have to think about how you differentiate yourself. And so that's why I think the question about target audience is so important. I think that's why making data-driven decisions when you have access to that data is important. And then to Catherine's point, using the tools that are available to you to try to make those decisions as you grow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So when we think about brands, we think about, you know, Nike, Apple, and what do they all have? They have these significant logos that are attached to them. So let's go back to basics when it comes to branding. In the cannabis space with marketing, there are some things that we have to keep in mind. So what are those things when you're creating a cannabis brand that you are having to think of that might be different from, you know, a typical Nike product or something like that? We always know that there's like compliance issues and that sort of thing, but what else are we thinking of that could possibly hinder something that you would want to launch?
You know, I think, and there's you know, before you can come up with a logo, you have to have the name, right? And if whether it's, I think however you want to take what it is that you're creating, however far you want to go with it, it's always good to feel confident that it's cleared from like an IP perspective, so that, you know, you build this brand and you don't want someone to hit you with some paperwork one day saying, hey, you can't use this name. This is our brand. We have all this paperwork filed, from a trademark perspective, which is a whole other conversation as it pertains to cannabis. But, just when you think about the future of, federal legalization and what that can look like for some of these brands that are being built right now. And there's resources where you don't necessarily need to work with an IP lawyer. It absolutely helps to take that deeper dive, but there's websites that I can't think of the URL off the top of my head right now. It's an acronym, but it's out there. It's available. You can search pending paperwork for different trademarks and different names. And that's always a good place to start, because there's no worse feeling than getting attached to a name and then realizing that you can't use it if you want to just feel really confident about how its clearance.
Right. It's the USPTO, and that gives you just the general look at what's already been filed and what's already registered. But I also think, if you're talking about whether it's a brand and what kind of items or what kind of design work you want to have inside the logo, again, that kind of goes back to your audience and your target and what you're really trying to say, whether it's clean, very straightforward, very clinical, or if it's really fun or really edgy. Who you're really trying to reach. And also, if you're a brand, you're already inside a dispensary, right? That's the only place you're really going to be able to find that brand. So you're probably a little more free to use the cannabis leaf or other imagery. I know that I've found with working with landlords and real estate agents, when you're talking about putting a sign up on the front of your dispensary location, they're probably not going to want you to put a logo up there that has a cannabis leaf in it. So that might get you in trouble. You may not get city clearance. You may not get landlord approval for your signage, that sort of thing. So some things to keep in mind about when you're designing your logo from a dispensary standpoint. But boy, there's been some really creative packaging done and branding done for some products that are out there on the shelves.
Perfect. That conversation kind of leads us into regulations when it comes to creating a cannabis brand. And I think you touched on it a little bit with real estate and signage, getting that approved by, let's say, a city. So what are some other things that you guys have come across as far as typical cannabis branding that we've seen when the industry first started out versus now, of what we're trying to avoid to alleviate that stigma?
Ashley, I'll jump in here. I love listening to what everyone's saying. I always learn on these webinars or Zoom meetings. What I was going to say, like what keeps going through my mind is, especially for new companies, new social equity applicants who are getting licenses, new brands, go to a professional for your logo design. Logo design is actually a complex process. It should convey a number of things. Make sure to use a professional when applicable. I love sites like Fiverr. I mean, those are great, but I've seen so many logos look almost identical because they all came from like a chop shop, which is great. I mean, those places have, but if you're designing a logo, use a professional who understands color. And as I like to say, don't over direct your logo. Let the artist do their work. Hire a good artist and let them create. Related to what Catherine said about compliance and logos, you always want to be a good community steward. If you're going to be doing business in cannabis, be a good community steward. Don't put a huge pot leaf on your window. That goes back to your logo. Like even with Proven Media, we have a really kind of traditional name, but we have two logo variations that we use. One has a cannabis leaf, one doesn't. So for some of, depending on the average consumer wouldn't even notice the difference. But when we went to do a sign on our building, we used the logo without the leaf. So, you know, just being thoughtful about design and using professionals and making sure that your logo just conveys professionalism and but yet ties into who your target is and what community you're in. And that.
Yeah. And piggybacking on that, I think one thing to keep in mind as well is the industry is evolving. For example, this will be our first holiday shopping season where rec is available in Arizona. We're really excited about what that means for not only serving our existing client base, but expanding to new cannabis users and people looking to make the switch from traditional holiday gifting to potentially gifting with cannabis. So just keep in mind that the industry is evolving and your approach toward building your brand, designing your dispensary should serve that idea, right? You now are in a position here in Arizona where you can really start to borrow aspects and elements of successful retailers and incorporate that into your brand. So, for example, if you find yourself in North Phoenix and you have an opportunity to stop by Giving Tree Dispensary, what you'll find is that it is a gorgeous open space on a high traffic corner. I like to use the analogy that it looks like Apple and Anthropology had a baby. That's the Giving Tree Dispensary. It's just a gorgeous place to be. We have tons of natural light. You're not locked in some sort of strange lobby where you're waiting to be let in behind some frosted glass. It really does reflect a more mainstream shopping experience. So think about that when you think about your branding and your logo as well. Think about those mainstream brands that you really love and look to emulate them. I think what you should also keep in mind is keep it simple. Your logo is going on buildings, it's going on marketing collateral, it's going on digital assets, it's in social media. So look at ways to work with that professional designer to create something that's going to be very flexible. Think about what is it going to look like on a shirt? What is it going to look like on a lanyard? And really make sure you're designing for every possible scenario.
And if I may say stuff to add on to that, what would it look like the size of like a small little postage stamp? Because a lot of the applications we're seeing, it's tiny. If you can't read the letters on your logo at a small scale, then you better rethink the logo.
Right. Well, and even as important, if not more important than the regulations on the logo design, and I know this is probably a whole nother conversation, but is the marketing regulations.
Yes.
There's so many restrictions on what on how to market a cannabis product or a cannabis brand. That's, like I said, probably a whole nother conversation, a whole nother panel. But yeah, keep that in mind as well, especially as we're talking about the holidays and shopping. To Steph's point, really treating our customers like regular traditional retail customers, but we can't always offer the same types of marketing that we are used to.
Yes, Catherine, we had a perfect example this morning, and as you said, we could do a whole seminar on that or a whole webinar, but we had an example where we had to modify a direct mail piece this morning because it had a tiny little cannabis leaf on it, and it was on a letter. Well, they declined the piece, they denied the piece, we had to redesign it because absolutely compliance when you're doing marketing is essential to understand the federal compliance as well as your state or local. Having the dispensary number on your ads. But as you said, Steph, and as you referred to Catherine as well, and I'm waiting for Allie to jump in because they have one of the coolest looking dispensaries, and Allie's got so much brand. But my point is again, just making sure that that you're compliant.
Yeah, and it's we're all learning. I think there is this 207 happening here, happened so quickly, right? We were one of the first 4 states to go to our recreational market. And I think as it pertains to compliance, just don't be afraid to ask questions. There is seriously no dumb question at all. Ask it 3 times if you need to. There's so much intricacy to what we haven't encountered yet. So it's always good to ask questions because that kind of can help, jog the thought process of just what could we potentially encounter if we do this. We've been having some cannabis infused dinners, and that's been a whole new learning in itself. And so really just how we have to transition the way in which we were operating when it was medicinal only to now recreational. And that really changes everything. But we're also really excited for the holiday season. You know, one last thing on logos, because I run into some dispensaries who've been around, you know, and it's just something that you might not think to ask your designer, but making sure you're getting it in all file types. So you have the PNG, you have the JPEG, you'll have a vector, you have a Adobe Illustrator version, just whatever, because I think to the point of Steph, that sophistication of your logo, you don't want to have a logo with a white or black background against, you know, an opposite colored ad or whatever the case may be. You want it to always look clean, and having the different versions of it that can be responsive. So if it is for LinkedIn, if it is for Instagram, a lot of those foundational pieces, you will have to have something that's responsive. So, to echo Kim's point, that professional designer is worth the investment for sure.
I think that goes into a good conversation as well, because whether you are a brand or a dispensary in the cannabis space, there is a lot of cross promotion happening between the two, because they're in the dispensary is promoting what brands they have. And so one thing that you have to keep in mind is creating those brand standards from the beginning. You know, what you're gonna have your logo, but what fonts are you going to be having for your brand, what colors and those color codes, and having that all cinched up into something so that that can be passed along with those native files, as they call them, for your logo, and anything else that would be part of your brand. Because I've seen so many dispensaries and brands, maybe one or the other created something with another brand with it, and it just doesn't mesh very well because maybe there wasn't some brand standards put in place. So something to keep in mind when you do launch your brand, to keep it very succinct and clean as it grows.
And even the photography style, you know, you've got the fonts and the colors, but also even the photography style can be vastly different, even though it's just a simple product.
Definitely. Yeah, because you can see, you know, different filters put on things sometimes, and it can change the look if it's put next to a brand and the feel of everything. So that's definitely part of that visual, you know, encompassing moment for you to tell who you are in a visual sense.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're an entrepreneur who's you know, starting out in this industry through this social equity license, Google is your friend. There are lots of brand guides out there that you can look at for inspiration and to understand the different components of a brand toolkit. Imagine it as though you're creating a set of instructions where, you know, here in the office, we call it the Godzilla protocol. So if Godzilla comes into town and wipes you off the map, what are these instructions that you leave behind to inform the creation of other assets, right? So if you're building your business, you're growing your team, you bring on a graphic designer, you bring on a photographer, you know, what are those instructions that you're giving them for the colors to use? What are your primary colors? What's your secondary color palette? What are those tertiary colors that you use when you want to do something really colorful? What's your primary font style? What's your secondary font style? When do you use them? What's your brand voice? What do you sound like? If you're sitting down to dinner, like I like to pretend, if a brand was a person and they were a friend of yours, how would you describe them? So I think all of those things are really great to try to pull together in the beginning, because it's just going to make everything that comes after, from the design of your dispensary to the design of the packaging of your brand, a little bit easier to execute.
I love that.
And it's actually kind of a fun exercise, like what Steph was saying. If your brand was a person sitting at a dinner party, what would they wear? What car would they drive? I mean, it's kind of a fun exercise to go through. It really helps pull out what this brand as a persona, you know, would really be like. What would they eat? Where would their fast food place be? Or what kind of music would they listen to? And it really helps. It's fun, but it really helps to kind of hone in on what you're trying to portray.
I love
And I
that.
think it helps with that differentiation too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just really like we're telling a story here, right? And like I've always had this idea, like the consumer is the main character, but the main character also has to have that person that helps them on their journey, you know, to get to that happy ending at the end, and whatever that is for that particular person. So it's such a fun exercise, and you can't go too deep, you can't drill too deep into it ever, because really, if you know, there's just layers and layers and layers, and I think that, yeah, that's such a fun exercise to do.
Right. And don't do it just once. You know, these are things that you probably should come back to again and again, because you know, you will evolve and you will grow. So yeah, don't do it just once.
I love that.
So we touched a little bit before on the use of your logo and some different ways that it could be used. There's going to be some ways as a dispensary that it's going to be used in packaging. Do you guys want to touch on the ways that you've seen your logo used, or if you feel like you have to create a new logo depending on what the packaging is?
I don't think you need a brand new logo for packaging, but maybe just, I know for Open Door, what we've designed is some exit bags that maybe have a different use of the logo. Maybe it's just 30% of the logo across, you know, really big across the side of the bag. So being able to use the logo so it's recognizable, but not necessarily just that logo stamped on everything. That's, to me, I think that's probably one of the last things you want to do, is just stamp your logo on everything. But being able to come up with different versions or different, you know, having a horizontal versus a stacked logo, but having those design elements that you can really hone in on and zoom in on and really kind of emphasize on maybe either a packaging or a shirt, or even, you know, wallpaper in the dispensary, or you know, I haven't done any packaging work in cannabis, but product packaging anyway, in the cannabis space. But I would imagine that it's very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also say that what is very helpful is considering, and again, a professional will help you with this, is considering an abbreviated logo. So, you know, we have a Giving Tree dispensary logo, but then we have a shorthand version of it that's used for smaller applications or to accent collateral where the full use of the logo isn't possible. And so that will be part of your brand kit. You'll definitely want to consider that. Thinking about Revelry, our cannabis brand for menopause, you know, there we've done something very different for a logo. We used a dry marker script. It doesn't lend itself well to an abbreviated version. So we really had to calculate the risk of where we would use the logo and what it would mean if we had applications that were smaller. And so the scale of it, the font style that we ended up using, had that kind of in the periphery, that would be a possibility that we wouldn't be able to use it in certain types of application because of that strategic choice that we made in its design. But I think for your dispensary, it's worth considering something like a shorthand or an abbreviated logo.
And you know, I mentioned that the horizontal logo and a stacked logo, but also consider a badge or an icon that can easily stand alone. That's what Cold Stone Creamery was very successful with. That simple circle with the ice cream cone in the middle, and that was one of our brands with Kahala, and they just did a fantastic job in being able to utilize that everywhere. Just a simple little medallion, and it was recognizable on lapel pins or big stickers or on the backs of t-shirts. It was really great. So
Definitely. We talked a little bit about who would your brand be if it was a person. And we have to think of that when we start to have employees as a part of our business. So how would you say that you have translated your brand to the people working for your company? Because in the end, it should be a fluid communication to them. If there's certain things that you've done to help with that.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about Giving Tree Dispensary, our brand is friendly, it's knowledgeable, it's open, it's hyper local. So our cannabis concierges in the dispensary are friendly, they're knowledgeable, they're hyper local. They volunteer for nonprofits in our immediate community, and they're invested in seeing their neighbors of the dispensary find what they need and achieve their health and wellness goals. So I think they are absolutely directly tied, that the way you decide, however you decide what your brand will be from a retail perspective, you want to hire a team that reflects those values. I think that in the cannabis industry, there's a real sense of family. So coming from a major bank, it was a very different culture that I stepped into. And there are some definite benefits to feeling that very intimate level of connection, right? People are more likely to want to see your dreams become a reality when they feel personally invested in the brand. But just a reminder to make sure that your expectations are very clear in how you want your brand represented. And remember that every aspect of your brand's your brand experience from a retail perspective needs to be carefully thought out. What people wear, the types of greetings that they use, how you want to move with the customer through the dispensary, what you want them to see, and what you want your employees to emphasize. So really think about, your favorite places to go and what those experiences feel like, how you're treated, and consider implementing some of those standards in your dispensary, all the while keeping in mind what your retail brand is and what you want it to say about you.
Well said.
Very well said. Yeah, I'm like, no, and this
That was it.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, if it feels overwhelming and expensive, which it is, there's companies that offer franchise models for dispensaries, and we have Catherine on our panel here, and that's exactly what their role is to allow a social equity applicant to come in and not have to worry about that, because that's their science of open door dispensaries. They can literally bring their model, their franchise model, and help you get open much quicker than having to go through all those steps. So if it's feeling overwhelming, if your forte maybe operations or this or that, but certainly not branding, you can always look at a company like Open Door Dispensaries, who can, all that's pre-established for you, and you can customize it then to your personal location.
Exactly. And along with that, we've taken care of the branding, but and I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to talk about this a little bit more, but we've pretty much laid out the entire playbook, all of the operational procedures, which also are very time consuming if you're trying to figure that out on your own. And the creative part, the branding part, is probably the part that seems like the most fun, which it is, but it's still, it's tough work, and it takes time. It takes a lot of thought process, it takes a lot of team time in figuring all of these things out. So we've tried to take at least that element out of it for the branding, and really a lot of the other operational procedures to help you get to market much faster, get your dispensary open on a much quicker pace. And
yes. And from what I understand, Catherine and panel, from what I understand, the social equity licenses, there'll be a fairly tight turnaround from the time you're awarded the license to when you have to open. So anything you can do to expedite or take away some of that pain is essential, because there will be a date where you have to be open.
Right.
Yeah, I would also add that if you are feeling overwhelmed, you're not the only one. This is a very overwhelming industry, and there's a lot of change, and there's a lot to learn. And it is a whole different ballgame than creating any other type of retail operation here in the state. So it's okay to feel that way. And I think it's really important to leverage some of the resources that Kim has discussed and that Catherine offers, because it is overwhelming.
Lots to learn.
Every day.
Right? Every day. It changes every day.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up with one last question. This is pretty broad, so just some of your favorite things that maybe you've done with your own brands. But once you open your dispensary and you've established your brand there, what are some fun ways that you can activate your brand outside of the dispensary? Because, obviously you're hoping everybody's just coming to you, but you also have to get them in the door.
I think Mita is one of those, a perfect example, right? Just being a part of the community and the local organization in cannabis, and reaching out to other ancillary companies that are in cannabis. Some of the, even accountants and attorneys and some of those professional other suppliers, other brands, reach out and just, it's a friendly industry. So reach out and make friends.
That is one thing. It is such a friendly industry, and everyone is so welcoming, and they're so quick to share their insights, share their experience. So that is, I think, a really wonderful part about knowing this program exists and knowing that it exists within our industry and our community in particular. Yeah, Mita is, I always recommend Mita to people, whether you're involved or you just want to learn and network. And then really, there's other events. What's really fun about REC is knowing that, hey, as long as this event company or the city is okay with me being there, I can be there now, and I can give bounce back coupons to come visit my dispensary, and I can, throw someone a t-shirt or a fanny pack, and they didn't have to necessarily come to an industry event to receive it or go to the dispensary to receive it. So from a branding and activation standpoint, I feel like a lot of doors have opened for the brands in Arizona. So that's going to be, and as long as COVID can just stay, away, we can really have fun.
Exactly. Perfect. Steph, unless you had any activation ideas, perfect. Okay. So we're going to go through the line again. Thank you so much to our panelists. If you would like to get in touch with them, I will let everybody say how you would like to be contacted. I'll start with you, Catherine.
Oh, yes. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or at our website, theopendoor.com, and it's DOR, just one or, .com. And, I just want to kind of follow up with just one tagline that we like to throw out is, with the Open Door, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So it's not only the opening process, but we'll be there to support you along the way, just like a traditional franchise model, just helping you make sure that you're as successful as you can be.
Thank you. And Steph?
I'm also available on LinkedIn, so I look forward to hearing from you. And I also just wanted to wish you the best of luck. This is a really exciting endeavor for all of you. And I have no doubt that you'll be so successful.
Thank you. And Allie?
I can also be found on LinkedIn at Allie Marconi and at copperstatefarms.com. Don't tell anybody, but all of the emails go to me. And likewise, this is such an amazing journey. And, to echo Steph and Catherine, like, you're not alone, and you're in good hands with the Arizona cannabis industry for sure.
Thank you. And Kim?
I also can be found on LinkedIn, Kim Prince with Proven Media. You can find our website, provenmediaservices.com. And as with the whole panel, all the panelists, what an exciting adventure you're on if you have a social equity license. And I just encourage you to keep the bar raised really high. You're an important part of your community. You're going to be serving underserved communities. So, just bring your best, bring your A game, and have a lot of fun.
Perfect. Thank you. And Proven Media is at provenmediaservices.com if you want to reach out there as well. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And we hope to talk to all of our social equity license operators very soon. Thank you. Bye.